This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yes, I have said it at the top of every show for probably the last 15 or 20 shows. But you can't over-publicize something that's really cool, right? And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about our guests. We want you to watch them as well as listen to them. So check out the PR Podcast on YouTube. Just make sure you put the in front of it because there's lots of PR podcasts, but only one the PR Podcast. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can also watch us on YouTube. Appreciate you subscribing there. Now let's get on with our show for today. We got a terrific guest. Dorie Klissas is the founder and president of Dorie Klissas Media and an Emmy Award-winning television producer. She spent 15 years at NBC's Today Show and is an Edward R. Murrow Award contributor for her work on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric. She served in leadership positions at major health systems, including the Mount Sinai Health System, Hackensack Meridian Health, and NYU Langone. Anyone in New York knows those three, where she oversaw an increase in media coverage there by as much as 1,000% in just her first year of tenure, securing high-profile placements like CBS's 60 Minutes and Face the Nation. She's currently the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer with LiveOnNY New York, the organ donor procurement organization for the New York metropolitan area, and we are thrilled that she's here. Dorie, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I love the energy.
You spent 15 years as a TV producer at the top of the game, right? Tell us a little bit about that experience, about doing that job and what it took.
Well, I started in about 1996, and Katie Couric it was her second year of being the anchor. And Matt Lauer came on after that, after Brian Gumbel. So really the incredible greats of the morning show era. And
Brian Gumbel, we're going all the way back.
Going all the way back. And, they were terrific because we worked really hard to write, our questions for them, the intros, do all the research, and serve it up to them the night before. And they took that and made everything so much better. So I ended up working a lot with Katie Couric on a lot of medical series during that time on Christopher Reeve when he had his horse riding accident. We spent a lot of time on spinal cord injury, autism, ADHD, infertility. Katie and I worked together on a lot of medical series that created a lot of attention on these issues and, helped people understand what was going on some of these topics. So it was really a great, incredible time of public service. We thought, we felt that we were doing. And then when she moved to the CBS Evening News, I followed her as her medical producer.
That is fantastic. Now, but producers are typically the driving force behind the coverage. Everybody's got input, but tell us about your role as the producer and the decision making that you put into each of those pieces.
Yeah, so you're getting about 10 pitches a day, even more, and you have to decide, what's going to make air. And so, it's got to have. I have a pitchable story sort of framework. It's got to have the wow factor. Is this, is it something that moves you basically? And is it something in the now? Is it current, tied to a trend, and explains why is it so important and what it means for you? So you're making decisions every day, rapid fire on what's news. And also I want to remind people that the best stories are the simplest stories. And, with the story arc of someone who, overcomes something and, and then makes it, and everybody loves those stories. So really, we were storytellers, and we would, if we had people out there with incredible stories, we would try to have them or help them tell their stories. The burn victim of 9/11, she wrote a book, Lauren Manning. She was burned 80% of her body. We did that as a 2-part series. She told our story, but she recovered and lived. And, Christopher Reeve was in a wheelchair and was able to create awareness about stem cell research. So, these stories of the personal stories, Today Show was known for these incredible profiles at the time. They do less and less tape these days. It's really much more of a live show. So when you're pitching, you have to realize that they're not going out in the field for 2 days like we did. I even went on the Christina yacht for 5 days in Greece. I mean, that was my assignment. And I went around the world with Matt Lauer for Where in the World is Matt Lauer. So those were the good times. And now it's really about, is your guest current? Can they talk about current medical topics? Can it happen quickly? It's a little bit different now in terms of what network TV wants.
Yeah, definitely always changing. We've both sat across the table from clients who have said, this is national news. And we kind of chuckle, or we hold back a chuckle. But truly, what makes national news? I mean, it's rare that something is immediately national, unless it is at, let's say, the federal government level. That's, of course, a naturally national story. But most other stories start as local stories. What turns them into giving them national appeal?
Yeah, I think it has to relate to as many people as possible, so that producer is saying, this new study, does it relate to 5 people with this medical condition, or does it relate to millions? And then they also, I've heard, I've been in my PR business now for a couple of years. I mean, Today Show producers are telling me, how can I promote fatty liver disease? I can't do that. And then a GMA producer is saying, well, wow, there's a first treatment for fatty liver disease. I'll do the story. So I think it's very subjective, and you never know when you're going to make national news. So, I have another author who wrote a book on being father of a child with autism. We got him local coverage, but we just couldn't get him the national yet. You kind of have to create a movement. Those small segments, radio, TV, they build. And then all of a sudden, he's a network spokesperson. So, I do think that you just can't have that big national hit right away. You got to build small and do the work and get your guests out there. And then at some point it will kind of, become a movement, and, and then there's going to be breaking news when they want him or her. So I think you have to just start small and then use an opportunity. Like during COVID, our CEO at Hackensack Meridian was a true thought leader. Our CEO, Mount Sinai, was a thought leader, but it wasn't until a major catastrophe like COVID or the Hurricane Sandy when I was able to call Sanjay Gupta and say, please let our CEO walk with you to the pediatric ICU so you can see the babies being born. And all of a sudden, Sanjay Gupta is doing a national story on the CEO, when before we may not have been able to get that coverage. And during COVID, in New Jersey, Hackensack was getting all the vaccines. We were talking about it a lot. And then we got our CEO on a Sunday show because he talked about New Jersey and how the vaccine rollout was happening. So, we basically use these in a way. I think PR folks or news people, you can use these crises when no one else is maybe thinking about it to get your leaders out there to talk about them, because everyone's kind of not moving or doing anything. So if you're stepping forward during that, the connection can be made and you may go national.
But should you, I fully agree with everything you just said. Should you, though, still be pitching, attempting for those national stories, if for nothing else than to begin building relationships with the reporters and the booking producers who are?
Oh, yes, you should always. Yeah, so I just had another pitch for Susan Zirinsky at CBS. She was helping me with pitching the CBS early show, and I told her the idea, and she says, "Oh, that's a hard reach. I don't know if they're going to take it, but they should know about it." So that's a great, point of view, that send it to them in a nice way and say, this is what we have. And then they'll get back to you and thank them, the producer. And then you'll say, no problem. And then send it again. So I do think you should pitch and then just let them know. And then, there'll be a time when they remember that email and then they'll connect with you. So definitely to build that relationship, even though they could say no, of course.
Yeah, no isn't a closed door. It's simply not right now. It's maybe next time, is the way I
Right. They
always.
say not at this time. And I love that because even they don't want to close the door because maybe one day they need that. But just being on their radar is so helpful.
You mentioned the health systems that you have represented and worked with. And like you referenced with COVID, they were the center of the universe, especially when it came to media and news, because that's where everything was. And that's where all the good information was, not only the good information, but also the heartbreaking stories were coming out of. I, at that time, and still do, represented a nursing home. So I was dealing with that every day, as in the same way that you might have been dealing with that at the hospital level. What makes a good medical story in your mind? You were a medical producer. What makes a
Yes.
good medical story?
Well, you really have to find a patient that's articulate and and can tell their story in a simple fashion, but with energy and enthusiasm. And you must have that element to get a medical story. You can't just go and say, I have this idea. You must package the idea with the patient. And you may, if you have 5 different patients and one topic, you could sell those stories to 5 different outlets with the 5 different patients. So you always want to have them. And you have to do a lot of work. You've got to ask, get them in order, get the, form signed, be ready, find out where they live, where they can go. So a lot of logistics, but then when you're talking to reporters, you have 5 to pick from and you'll place based on, logistics or whatever, based on the elements. But you really have to have a great patient story and a doctor or the expert, who's also articulate and can talk, explain the topic.
You touched on the topic there of exclusivity. And of course, major publications, whether it's the TV networks or it's the New York Times or it's the Wall Street Journal, unless it's breaking news, almost always want to have exclusivity. And it's completely understandable, right? How do you navigate pitching stories to multiple outlets and trying to maintain an element of exclusivity?
Well, unless you say it's an exclusive or decide on it, I do feel that I can go to one TV and one print, or even if it's exclusive. Let's say I can go to a TV and say, okay, you're going to have it exclusive. But then I say, do you mind if print comes? Because they're going to do one as well. And so I always try to just ask them if one or the other could come as that exclusive. But if you don't say the word exclusive, you could offer the same story, but I would probably offer different patients or a different angle to different outlets. But if there's something happening live, like, a Painted Legacy event is happening for LiveOnNY New York, where I work right now. And it's where the donor, the recipient families paint their loved ones. So we just send out an advisory and they can, as many, journalists who want to come. And so, it kind of depends on your conversations with the journalists.
Should you, great advice there. Should you ever upfront offer an exclusive? And what are the circumstances under which you would, as a PR person, offer it, or as a producer, expect it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to go to one morning show and say, this is an exclusive. If you get a morning show, you could say, I'm going to give it to you as an exclusive if you think you have a great chance. That's the way to do it. You don't want to be on 3 morning shows. It's just not the nicest thing to do to anyone, to your guests or the morning shows. And, so, and then
it's a quick way to end a relationship with those morning shows too, right?
Right. Though, Katie Couric in her book talked about, people racing around trying to get on different shows in the morning. It's too chaotic. But, and usually the journalist will say, can I have an exclusive? Right. And then, you would say yes or no, you decide. So, you have to be judicious and it's all about relationships. If you do the right thing, you're going to be able to go back on a morning show. If you don't and burn bridges, you're not.
Should PR people be pitching the reporters at any time, or should they really be going to the producers?
Oh, it's so interesting. you could go, you have to figure out who's going to read your email or take your call. So I do both. Sometimes the reporter will respond and say, I really like this idea. I haven't done this before. The producers may be too busy if they're working on breaking news. The planning producers, I go to planning producers sometimes for local TV. So it's who you have your relationship with and who will answer your email or call. And I will write to all three of them because I will only get either 0 answers or 1.
I love that answer because it's brutally honest. It's
and
the
then
truth.
Also,
whoever's going to send you an email back.
I also say I've also reached out to the planning producer. You know, you could say I know a few colleagues there, and here you say, oops, sorry, we're traveling somewhere, I guess, on the other line.
That's okay. Go ahead, you pick it up wherever you want.
It's all about relationship building. So, you know, you go to the person you have the relationship with, but if you don't and you're writing to a new outlet, you might try 3 people, but it might be nice to say, I've already, reached out to so-and-so and so-and-so, but I thought you'd be interested because of you want to read their work or see their work and explain why you're writing to them. I've seen you do work on autism, so you want to start that personal connection in the email so that it's not, so they know that you have read or seen their work.
How fast, last question on this topic, and then we're going to move on to something else. How fast should we as PR people be expecting a response from a producer, from a reporter, from someone who's working in that, always on kind of environment like network TV?
Well, I wrote to about 10 podcast producer in November, and I got 2 responses in January. So that happens, it could be 2 months. That's a podcast. That's not even breaking news. For breaking news, if you don't hear from them right away, usually if you write to them and they're on and they write to you back, that you're so lucky you caught them. And Wednesdays are the best day for that. They're all producers and reporters seem to have a down day on Wednesdays. So if you write to them in the middle of the day, they may respond immediately. And then it takes maybe 2 days. But then if they don't respond, you want to say any interest in this in a follow-up email, maybe 3 days or 4 days after. And then you could do it another week and try again. But then, I think one more and then that's it. So.
Right. So it depends on how urgent it is, but reasonably, 24, 48, 72 hours, they love it. If not, it's either not that urgent for them or they just don't like it.
Right. And when I was working on the Today Show, we had people who are, sources, I guess people I had done stories on. They would call me and say, I have this story for you. And, they would sell it. And then, then you say, okay, let me go back and see if my, our producers want it. But at that time, I remember a lot of phone calls. Now it's so much more email and it's just a little different, but I like those days.
Yeah, I enjoy the days of calling people up too, but yeah, email is just more efficient. It creates threads and trails. It's just easier for everybody to manage. Mm-hmm. Great advice. Thank you so much for sharing all that, and I hope everybody's listening was taking notes because that was the real deal of how you work in a network environment. Let's pivot a little bit to your work with LiveOnNY because I think it's an incredibly important organization that you work with. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us what you do for them.
Yeah, so all the clinical people there are working so hard to actually get referrals from the hospital of people who have passed or are going to pass, who could be, an organ donor because they put it on their license or have chosen to be one, or their family. You could ask the family if they want to be a donor as well. So if we get a referral, our people go to the hospital and speak with the family and see if they'd like to be a donor. So if they are, we procure the organs, and then we, through a very special sort of a service where the sickest people are at the top of the list, we deliver those organs to those people who are the sickest with a certain, there's a certain governmental list, and we go down that list. So our people do that. But in marketing communications, we want to create awareness of organ donation so that people go home and have a conversation with their family about what they would like should anything happen. And so, when we tell these stories, these people are at the most vulnerable, time of their lives. And early on with the CEO, when he first started, they would not let the PR folks reach out to the recipients or the organ donor families for like 5 months. And he changed that because he said, we want the people, to be able to tell their story even at that moment, because maybe someone died in a bad situation and they became an organ donor. Why not let them tell their story about saving 8 lives at that moment? So, we reach out to them. We ask them if they'd like to share their story and how much it could mean to educate others about donation. And so we honor their wishes. So, if they want to tell their story, we help them. We, create introductions for media, a lot of reunions between organ donor families, organ hero families and the recipients, and media covers that. And right now I'm covering Ken Abbott. He's a 62-year-old heart recipient. He biked from California to St. Augustine and finished last Saturday. And we're doing a documentary on his travels because he was riding to create awareness of donation and to kind of honor his organ donor hero, the person who gave him his heart. So.
And that's a great view inside of what a PR person does. It's not just pitching stories like we were talking about in our last segment, but it's also doing things like documentary style video, it's social media, it's probably converting all that stuff into donor and potential donor communications. Can you talk about how you use your PR skills to wrap around the different audiences and recipients that you communicate with with Live On New York?
Yeah, all the news we make, I would say, gets sent out to our to the external audiences through a newsletter. All the stories we cover go on social media. We have long form videos and short form videos that are on our YouTube channels. Our website has the information in short and long versions. So, whenever we do a story, we if it's on the news, we put it on social, and it creates even a stronger community around that. And then we send it out in our newsletters. We have a board. We send it to the board. So a PR person, you're right. You're creating. You're connecting with a guy who's biking around the country. You're following him. He agreed. You're creating every place we went. We sent media advisors, and media covered him in California and Phoenix and New Orleans. So also creating a movement around this in a way, getting the excitement up. And then now, when he comes back, we'll offer him to New York audiences or media. And then he'll be speaking at different events. He'll be biking at different events. He's a terrific ambassador. We have so many ambassadors who give back to Live On New York and come when we have government officials. They tell their stories, and then we keep creating content like you're really producing content in our job at Live On New York, and you're getting and disseminating it across as many channels as we can.
Interesting question to end on, I think. What gets your pulse going, whether you were a producer at network TV or whether you're a PR person or someone working with Live On New York or any other of your clients? What gets your pulse going about a story? What about a story makes you look at it and go, yeah, that's awesome?
Well, when I say, oh my God, that's a story we have to cover, right? It's just like I'm like, oh my God, we just have to cover this. So, as a producer what you should cover and if it's going to work. But when people make the transition from, let's say, being a producer or a journalist to PR, they don't often know they're going to like PR, right? And so what happened to me when I started doing PR and sending out my media advisories or press releases on scientific studies, if like 10 people wrote back and wanted to cover the story, I was elated. That adrenaline of them responding to that press release, that really excited me. So I said, oh, I think I really like PR. So what gets me is if I have a lot of interest and then I'm trying to field all the calls and I feel like I'm back in news, but just like in a different way. So
Yeah, a friend of mine calls that chasing the dragon, and it's not wrong.
Ah, I love it. That's good.
Absolutely. Well, Dorie, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your perspective. I learned a lot, and I hope everybody listening did too.
Well, it was great to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are not done with you yet, however. We are going to segue now into the rapid fire question portion of our podcast. This is where we steal a page from inside the actor's studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions meant to elicit a simple answer, maybe a laugh or two. With your indulgence, Dorie Klissas, let's begin with rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
Well, I like the New York Times, The Daily. I think they do an incredible job, and I figure out what's news that day by listening to The Daily. And then it's funny, after that, I listen to the Daily Show, and then they're like, they have all the funny comments by every politician. They do historic research back to what they said like 20 years ago, and so you're really learning about the present and the past. So that's like my favorite way to wake up.
Love the mix. Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform?
Well, I like LinkedIn. I think it's nice, and I get to see what everyone's working on. So that's what I would say.
Rapid fire question number 3, coffee or alcohol?
Definitely coffee, and not so much, like 1 a.m, and I'm good.
Rapid fire question number 5, what's your favorite on the run food? Come on, ex-TV producer.
Oh, I love croissants, so I'll eat them anywhere.
And rapid fire question number 5, Dorie, what do you want to be after you finish this career?
Oh, I want to be a world traveler. I want to travel full time.
Not surprising for someone who's always telling stories. You probably want to go and tell more.
Yes.
Dorie, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
I think the easiest is Pitchable Stories at DorieKlissas.com, DorieKlissas.com.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Dorie. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.